Rachel, where I thought I'd give you a bedtime on the other. This is chapter 3 of has title as it says his greatest achievement. His famous refugee Lawton Jr. and Ludwig von Mises. Better so, can refute 6 than 4 pages. Liars regarding his title. This is Keynes.
Historians, 50 years from now, may record that Keynes' greatest achievement was the liberation of Anglo-American economics from a tyrannical dogma, that they may even conclude that this was essentially a work of negation unmatched by comparable positive achievements. Even, however, this is actually one of Keynes' supporters, even, however, if Keynes were to receive credit for nothing else, his title to fame would be secure. Yet the Keynesian attacks, though they appear to be directed against a variety of specific theories, all fall to the ground of validity if Say's law is assumed. So this ancient classical postulate of economics is very important to this entire argument. And this is back to Hazlitt. I think I am justified, therefore, in devoting a special chapter to this subject. It is important to realize, to begin with, as Mises has been an integral part of classical economics, but as a preliminary, as a refutation of a fallacy that long preceded the development of economics as recognized as a special branch of knowledge. Whenever business was bad, the average merchant had 2 explanations at hand. The evil was caused by a scarcity of money, by general overproduction. Adam Smith, in a famous passage in Wealth of Nations, exploded the first of these myths. Say devoted himself to a refutation of the second. For a modern statement of Say's law, I turn to Benjamin Anderson. The central theoretic involved in the problem of post-war problem is the issue and the purchasing. The expensive financing after the war, means of getting full employment, production and purchasing power must purchase the production. The prevailing views of purchasing power the countries are the countries. The 20th century more than vastly more. And for automobiles, shoes, cotton goods, and other things that the wheat producer wants. So he's saying that consumption comes from production. Supply of shoes gives rise to demand for wheat, for silks, for automobiles. I already said that. Supply and demand in the aggregate are thus not merely equal, but they are identical, since every commodity may be looked upon either as a supply of its own kind or as a demand for other things. But this doctrine is subject to the great qualification that the proportions must be right, that there must be an equilibrium. Keynes's refutation of Say's law consists in simply ignoring this qualification. He takes his first targeted passage from John constitutes the means of payment as simply commodities. Each person's production of others are inevitably ours. We should double commodities in every market, but we should as well as double, so be able to buy twice as much because everyone would have twice as much exchange. From Mill, man pointed out, does not present the essential modern. If we doubled the productive pie of the commodities in every market, and if we did, we should not buy in every market. If we double the supply, we should have an appalling glut of salt. The great increases would come in the items where demand is elastic. We should change very radically the proportions in which we produced commodities. But as Anderson goes on to point out, it is unfair to Mill to take this brief passage out of its context, presented as if it were the heart of Say's law. If Keynes quoted only the 3 sentences immediately following, he would have introduced us to the conception of balance and proportion and equilibrium, which is the heart of the doctrine. The conception which Keynes nowhere considers in his general theory. The passage torn from its context, quoted above, are as follows. It is probable, indeed, that there would now be a superfluity of certain things, although the commodity would willingly double its aggregate consumption, and may already have as much as it desires of some commodities, and it may prefer to do more than double its consumption of others, or to exercise its increased purchasing power on some new thing. If so, the supply will adapt itself accordingly, and the values of things will continue to conform to their cost of production. The doctrine that supply creates its own demand, in other words, is based on the assumption that a proper equilibrium exists among different kinds of production, and among different products and services. And it, of course, assumes proper relationships between prices and costs, between prices and wage rates. It assumes the existence of competition in free and fluid markets by which these proportions, price relations, and other equilibria will be brought about. No important economist, to my knowledge, ever made the absurd assumption, of which Keynes, by the implication, accuses the entire classical school. Thanks to Say's law, depressions and unemployment were impossible, and that everything produced would automatically find a ready market at a profitable price. Say's law, to repeat, the cornerstone on which the great edifice of the positive doctrines of the classical economists was based, was merely a refutation of an absurd belief prevailing prior to its formula. Resume the quotation from Mill. At any rate, it is a sheer absurdity that all things should fall in value, and that all producers should, in consequence, be insufficiently remunerated. If values remain the same, what becomes of prices is immaterial, since the remuneration of producers does not depend on how much money, but on how much of consumable articles they obtain for their goods. Besides, money is a commodity, and if all commodities are supposed to be doubled in quantity, you must suppose that money would be doubled too, and then prices would no more fall than values would. In Say's law was mile goods, and if you ask them in money wage rates as a result of union monopoly protected and insured by law be found for goods produced at such production. So what this comes down is production of goods, because they wouldn't have produced, but with places where we have due to a stimulated these goods aren't going to find a buyer, and they're such as like the housing market, and they couldn't find a world which is, since of government involvement, are produced will be. Thanks, and have a good day.